Good morning all, it's What a Load of Bull, episode 23. Welcome back to the channel. Sorry for the hiatus. I thought I'd give you a bit of a project update and give you a few excuses why there's not been any content, and also give you a bit of an update on plans moving forward. So shortly after the last video, when we finally solved the starting issue, I got the car running great on the new ECU. I still had to do the odd cam switch setting on startup, but it was running really good. After a night of hard launches up and down my local test track, I cooked the torque converter. I wasn't quite sure what it was at the time, so I swapped I had the gearbox and I had a spare gearbox and had that swapped straight in. I didn't really want to mess around with any troubleshooting. Unfortunately, I had that spare gearbox set aside. I was going to build it. Got an input clutch pack to go in it and a valve kit, but I had just spent all my money on troubleshooting the starting issues, which turned out to be something really simple. So I had my local garage, SC Blue. They swapped out the gearbox for me. Can't give them enough props. I had the Stagea taken there on a recovery truck. Simon, the main guy, came out that afternoon, picked up the K11, which at the time was off the road, with my spare gearbox. I MOT'd the K11 the next day, so I was mobile again, and had this back on the road with the backup gearbox shortly the next week. So big thanks to Simon and Josh for that. Fully recommend them. I'll put their website down below. They're in Taunton, Somerset. So yeah, anything that is slightly out of my reach, I tend to go to them. So that was probably November time. I then drove the car like a nun over winter because I was scared of cooking the gearbox again. I had a trans cooler ready to fit but hadn't quite fitted it, and I think ultimately there was problems with that gearbox or the torque converter that was in there, because the one that I've got in there here now behaves an awful lot better. So like I said, did very little with the car over the winter. Drove it like a nun. Probably February time, weather got a bit better and I fitted the trans cooler, and then started getting it ready for the dyno. Dropped it off there, and then shortly, or while it was being worked on at GB, I blew up the gearbox in the K11. So that was off the road. Had to get this back. One of the main reasons why I wasn't driving it over winter was the cold start, but in the time that it was at GB, they got the cold start sorted, so that made it drivable day to day. Quick trip up to Wales to meet Mr. French from the Micro Mafia posse. Got the K11 back on the road, which meant I could then take this back to the dyno. So I got it finally on the dyno, probably after 6 months after its first visit, and we're running out of fuel. So the bigger turbo and intercooler and everything like that, we got to about 1.5 bar at 5,000 revs, and the stock injectors, which I knew would be the weak point of everything, they're at 100% duty cycle. So got a lot of things dialed in though, drivability wise. Cam control, that is now spot on. It follows our target. The VE tables all sorted. I'm driving on wastegate pressure at the moment, just in fear of maxing out the injectors and overdoing it. And to be honest, I think I was quite lucky because I've been booting it quite a lot, and luckily didn't cause any damage. But looking at logs, I probably could have done that, something that I wasn't looking at. So let's talk about future plans first, I guess. By the end of the summer, I will have fitted 6 new injectors. These are 660cc Siemens injectors. They do have a different connector, so I've got a spare injector harness from Jean-Francois at JM Imports, so thanks for that, mate. Lots of my stuff, including the spare gearboxes, come from him, so yeah, awesome, thank you. So yeah, it is a different connector, so I'm going to make this into a bit more of a fancy harness with the correct connectors. I've got a Walbro. This is a 255, so it's similar to the DW one which I fitted. However, I've been advised to take that out before it fails, so I'm not going to go into that too much. It's been working fine for me. However, my tuner says go for a Walbro, so that's what we're doing. So that's going to be done by the end of my summer break, hopefully, ready to go back on the dyno. But now I'm going to rebuild the Brembos at last. These were the first couple of videos of the channel, was actually starting the refurbishment of these, where I totally ruined them. I then bit the bullet and had sense and took them to be shot blasted and powder coated, and they look absolutely amazing. And the main thing that's been holding me up is doing the decals. I absolutely hate paint and stickers and things like that. That's partly how I ruined them in the first place. However, I have got these nice high temp silver decals, so I'm going to be fitting these today, or applying these today, with a bit of lacquer to go over the top. The powder coaters did do a couple of tests for me to try and get some sticker under a powder coat, but it didn't quite work well, so we thought that this would be the best way to do it. So yeah, while I guess I'm driving like a nun at the moment, I'm not going past 5,000 revs, and before this thing gets fast, which it's about to do very, very soon, I figured we should probably get these Brembos on. So that's going to be the aim today. What I need to do is kind of go through. They did do a good job of masking them. There's just a couple of edges on the flat surfaces which I need to address with a Stanley knife or some real fine wet and dry. Obviously being careful here, you just got a little bit of over stuff here which I need to cut out, and that's kind of on all of them. So I'm going to get the bits that I need to paint prepped first, get them painted, and then while they're drying, or get them lacquered while they're drying, move on to the other half of each caliper. And then I've got piston seals, bolts, out to my local bolt shop, Western Nut and Bolt. I took the Brembo ones down because you're not meant to take these calipers apart, therefore you can't find the exact information, but I took down the bolts and they got me some replacement ones, so Western Nut and Bolt in Taunton. Also got some replacement O-rings, out to bits a bike on that one. So yeah, let's crack on. What a load of bull. Episode 23. What a good one to bring the channel back to life on. I'll see you in a bit. Right, we are set up in the dining room workshop. So, like I said, first thing I'm going to do is kind of deburr these of all the bits of powder coat which have kind of gone over the edges. I've got a selection of sharp things here. I'm not sure what's going to work best, but I'll report back and let you know what does. This face, there's a bit of overspray or a bit of degradation of the casting now. I'm not sure. Not so worried about that, but where the port is, this needs to be perfect, and there's just ever so slight edge that you can feel just from the masking. So we're going to scratch that back with one of these blades. I've got some 600 grit here, I've got some even finer stuff, and I'll probably use this this flat just to help me get that bit there sorted. So yeah, I'm going to do the outer halves first. They're the ones which are unwrapped, they're the ones that need the decal. I'll get them prepped as much as I can, and then get some lacquer on top of the stickers, and then while they're drying move on to the inner halves which I haven't unwrapped yet. Right, these are pretty much deburred or de-oversprayed, or however you want to put it. The best thing I found was Stanley blade. On the flat surfaces on the edges I kind of scraped it off and then gave it a bit of a chamfer from the edge, a bit like if you're doing grip tape on a deck. And then I went round the corners with some 600 wet and dry and just kind of blended that in. So all of these edges are now nice and smooth. All the faces are nice and flat, although they were anyway, but I just got off all the overspray. And I've gone round and cleaned out all of the gaps from, all the seal gaps here, which had a little bit of powder coat and a little bit of grit in there as well. Again, Stanley blade, bit of wet and dry, folded up, wedged round, and then I also used this tiny screwdriver as a bit of a chisel just to get out any last bits. So I'm going to give these a quick rub with some fresher 600 I think, or maybe a bit finer, just so that the lacquer's got something to grip to. No, actually, before I do that, I'm going to run through any threads just to make sure that everything's clear that needs to be. Some of these are guide bolts, so these actually have a pin which goes through them rather than an actual thread. For the most part though, the threads look pretty good, but while they're all accessible, I'm just going to get them clear. Oh, there's one there and one there also. They do look pretty churned up, so yeah, get the threads done, then quick rub down so that they've got a bit of a surface for the lacquer to stick to. Get the decals on, get the lacquer on, let them dry, and then while they're drying move on to the other halves of these. Awesome, so that's all pretty much sorted. All the threads were clear apart from these ones, and these are the guide, or the caliper guide, caliper carrier, that kind of thing, bolt which goes in there. So just buzz that out with an M6 tap. That's all good now. I did just open up and make sure that all the pad pins can go through, and they will seat nice now. So I'm going to go over them very carefully with a bit of 600 just to key them up a little bit, get these stickers on and get the lacquer on top of that. Hopefully get a couple of coats of that today while it's not raining. Relatively pleased with the outcome of that. I'm not a sticker vinyl guy. Some of them were a bit fiddly. I've had the stickers for a little while, they didn't quite come apart from the backing properly, so it took a few attempts to get there. And considering you'll never see two of these calipers at the same time, you'll only see left or right, I think that'll do. Didn't end up keying them. I did a little test area and it looked like it was going to ruin the powder coat. I don't know enough about this type of finish to know whether a lacquer would have fixed that afterwards, so I just opted not to. Think it's going to rain pretty soon, so I'm going to get these arranged under cover and get some lacquer on top of them, and then move on to the other halves. So got the front inner halves done. One thing I am going to do quickly though is get a flap disc either on the drill or grinder and just take this back to the metal, because that's like a mating surface. The bolt goes through the caliper carrier and connects into there, so that needs to be metal. It was before, but it was overlooked. Other than that, all looking pretty good. I'm getting better at clearing out all the gunk and stuff, and I'm also getting less fussy as I go on, so we'll see how successful that is. But other than that, these halves are done. Well, that worked well. Paint stripper bit disc type thing, not really used it before, but that was one that was in the grinder. Thought I'd give it a go and it worked pretty well straight away, so I think I might just buzz these top bits as well. Let's see whether there's anything else which could do with being flattened off. Right, I'm done with tidying them up now. Time to get the seals and the pistons back in. Hard to see, but there's like an inner lip inside there. That's where the main fluid seal goes. And then on top there's a dust seal which seals in the piston. I've clamped these down-ish. I reckon I might need to get a bit tappy with the seal on the top. Okay, so here's the first of one of the fluid seals, and I've got some brake fluid here, so I'm just going to dunk it in there, let it soak up a little bit, and then work it into where it needs to go on each one. And then I will grease up the cylinder a bit inside and then refit the piston. So I took these apart almost 2 years ago, that's how bad it is. But everything's labelled meticulously as to where it came from, so everything will go back in. I lubed up the piston, lubed up the barrel inside, gently pushed it in, twisting it, and it will go further, but I've left about that much because on the dust seal there's a lip which goes onto there, so I want to make sure that's sticking up at the moment so I can get that on there nicely. Then I can let that drop further down, and then I can tap in the outer seal, probably using a big socket. Ta-da! So that's the rear main bodies done. The outers are pretty much dry now, so that's good. So I'm just going to move on to the front main bodies. These have one larger and one smaller piston, so just be aware of that when you're putting in your seals, make sure you got the right one. And these are done. So again, pretty straightforward. Greased up the pistons, greased up the cylinder. I did go through a few, so I recommend if you're doing this, buy a couple spares. Not 100% happy with this one. So other bits I've just put in are the pad guides. I'm just showing them up again with my new favourite disc, and I bought some fresh M6 Torx. Let's see what torque they are. T30. The other ones are totally seized in there and took quite a lot of persuasion to get out, so I wasn't going to reuse those. Got new bolts all round. And then one's in now for the rear main bodies. Similar principle, but they can go on either side. There's no little lip like on the front ones. So they're all done. Now to do the ones which have been drying all day, and then bolt them back together. That's the last of the guide plates in, both sides. So just going to research torque specs and get these halves back together. I have dipped the O-ring in brake fluid. These are M12 bolts, so I'm going to do them up to 100 newtons, 100 newton meters, and I'm going to cake the threads in Loctite. There we have it. 4 calipers all back together. So the only thing that's missing at the moment is the bleed nipples, but I'll do that when we get it nearer to the car. Like I said before, I did the top bolts, or the big ones, the M12 to 100 newtons, and the M10 ones in the rear calipers to 62 newtons. These are 12.9 bolts, so they can handle that extra bit of torque. So yeah, what a day. I'm going to end this video now, and then we'll do a part 2 when we come to fit these on the vehicle. So thanks for watching. Sorry again for the delay in all the videos, and like I said at the beginning, we've got quite a few things in the pipeline, so more to come soon. Take care.